Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber. I am solo here today. It is the 4th of July, Independence Day in the United States. For those of you that are watching us from all over the globe, this is a official holiday in the U.S., and I want to thank Jesse and Richard for coming in today on their holiday. They're the only ones here besides myself, and we are here to make sure that we're there for our viewers and our audience.
I'll put it on the main screen so they can see the background.
Yeah, so the background is a AI rendered image of a Tesla semi-truck, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. And what I asked for was show me a semi-truck on a lone road with beautiful snow-capped mountains in the background, and I think it did a pretty good job. So the Tesla semi, Tesla announced this 18-wheeler semi 6 years ago, and made the first deliveries the end of last year, actually. The semi can travel 500 miles on a single charge and could cost as much as $250,000. Now, there are two versions. One is the 500-mile version and the 300-mile version, and an 87,000-pound capacity. There are some Tesla semis on the road already. Pricing is still somewhat unclear, though, and I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure if that's one of the areas where Tesla actually allows negotiation to take place regarding pricing. Everything else is one price for it's the same for everybody. They did say, though, in 2017, that the shorter range electric vehicle semi would be $150,000, and the 500-mile semi would cost $180,000. Now, I wish we had done the homework, but I think a diesel semi, a Peterbilt, for example, costs much more than that.
Yeah, I can check that. I think it is quite a bit more than that, but let me double check.
So it sounds like this would be a pretty good bargain for anybody that's in the long-haul business. And while Jesse's looking that up, the sleek interior, they say, is one central seat with two 15-inch screens to the left and the right of the steering wheel. And you know what? We did see one of these in our neighborhood during Super Bowl, actually. It was a Frito-Lay semi. And as shocked as we were, the guys were out test driving a Roadster going up the street here toward Deer Valley Road, and saw this big semi coming at them that made absolutely no noise whatsoever. And one of them said, I think that's a semi, or the Tesla semi.
I think that was you, right?
Yeah, that's right. So it was Aaron, Max, and I. We had Max's big DJI camera, and we were going to go get some B-roll just driving up and down the street and, getting traffic and all that. And as we were getting into the car, we turned and we saw this just giant thing, silent, moving, and the guy just waved to us, and we all just kind of looked by, and we're like, that was a Tesla semi. And we were all just like, get in, go, follow him, let's go figure out where he's going. And it was just around the corner. And he, that was a pretty fun experience.
So I get a call from these guys. Pete, there's a semi in the neighborhood. I probably was a blur as I ran outside to get in that Roadster and to go over and see that Tesla semi. And what we ended up doing was I took one of the test drive Roadsters, and we pulled it up next to the semi, which was now parked at one of the vendors here in our neighborhood that does wraps. And it was there to get the wrap done for the Frito-Lay logo before the Super Bowl, since they were going to be promoting themselves and the semi. And we took some really cool pictures. It was quite a juxtaposition of this tiny little Roadster and then the big semi. And we captioned it on Facebook, father and son, and no one was really sure which one was the father or the son. TikTok, it looks like we got a question coming in from Biagio. He says, which model in your Tesla do you believe is the best car they've built? Oh, hands down, the Roadster. Now, of course, there are some stellar Teslas beyond the Roadster.
Come on, Pete.
We have to.
I know you love the Roadster.
Yeah, we have to give credit, of course, to the Plaid, Model S.
Yeah.
And then some people, they like the SUV, the Model X. And
well, the Model Y is supposed to become the best-selling car in the world this year, I think.
Yep, poised and ready. So I'm sure that that's my personal opinion, and from a design standpoint, the other Teslas are far more advanced. Full self-driving, for example. But I'm a sports car guy. I like speed. I like two-seaters and the wind in my hair when I used to have it anyway. So yeah, the Roadster is my favorite. In terms of best, that's a relative term. There are certainly better technologies and more coming out. Now that second generation Roadster that everybody's waiting for, that's going to be quite a car as well.
And that brings up a good question, Pete. Do you think that car is going to have full self-driving? And if it does, is there going to be an option to just completely launch every single chance you get?
Sport car guys or car guys don't like all of those bells and whistles. We like to feel the road. I don't want power steering. I don't want ABS braking. I want to experience the essence of the car. So yeah, full self-driving would be of no interest to me in a performance car like that because I actually want to hold that wheel. I want to experience. I want to do the switchbacks. I want to do some drifting, and full self-driving I don't think is going to allow me to do most of that.
Well, that's totally fair. I do want to make a counterpoint. If they don't include full self-driving in that car for that reason, to honor the essence of a sports car, people are going to talk crap.
Oh yeah, totally. And of course, the longer we wait for that new Tesla Roadster, the better the specs become. We're at a point now where it started off at 1.9 seconds, 0 to 60. And, now that there are other cars that are beginning to break that record, Tesla is taking a hard look at the performance of this new Roadster, even talking about SpaceX boosters on the back, which basically makes it a rocket engine. So it'll be interesting to see when this thing finally comes out. Biagio says on TikTok, even my Model 3 rear-wheel drive feels like a sports car when I drive it. I love the handling and the acceleration. Yeah, that's one thing Teslas are known for. Those of us that come from the ICE world, there was nothing like that before Tesla. So getting back to this Tesla Semi, what I started to point out was since we had an actual experience with a Semi, we're able to look inside, there's a jump seat in there. And, my first question was, well, with one seat, I guess hitchhiking is completely dead now. I'm from a generation where hitchhiking was quite prevalent and it was quite safe. I don't remember people getting hurt doing hitchhiking, but nowadays I guess it's different. But there's a little jump seat to the right, and so you could have one passenger anyway. But what you can't have is they don't come with a sleeper cab, and it's because they're designed for day trips. Now, Elon actually said, let me see if I can find that here.
So they have, because they do have a pretty high range, so they're still only made for day trips.
Only made for day trips, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess I can't find the part where
The other
Elon
interesting thing too is the driver's in the middle.
Yeah, yep. And that middle position gives you a nearly 360-degree view thanks to 4 cameras that help the driver avoid blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
When we asked the driver of that Frito-Lay Semi, first we asked him, are you a truck driver? He said, oh yeah, driven many rigs. I said, well, how does this thing differ? And he was a bit hesitant to get on camera because Frito-Lay frowns upon employees talking about their stuff, right? But he said he's never driven anything like it. In fact, you were there. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, his whole demeanor was that this was, like going from a Flintstones car to a rocket ship.
Yeah, it was a game changer.
100%.
Yep. So far, the people that have these trucks, these semis, are Anheuser-Busch, Walmart, and UPS are among the big companies that have ordered the vehicle.
And Pepsi.
Pepsi, yep, right. And, of course, Frito-Lay, which already has them. There were some issues originally, like there would be with any new design. Some of the Frito-Lay semis broke down. They fixed them. Then there was a recall of 35 of them, and I'm not even sure how many were released. I think it was 70 or something like that, and then 35 of them got recalled. And the problem was the parking brake could fail and cause the truck to roll away. It had something to do with the latching mechanism or something, which they fixed fairly quickly. In 2018, Elon said in an earnings call that about 2,000 Tesla semis had been reserved. But at this point, it's still unclear since they're not releasing those statistics as to how many or how that's grown, how many have been reserved at this point. Elon also mentioned that they're not really trying that hard to sell the semi. It's not like there's an ongoing sales effort, he said. He said orders for semis are like opportunistic, really companies just approaching us. So now that Tesla's beginning to advertise, maybe that will change.
Now, Pete, I'm going to pull up the image too.
Sure.
So that people can see.
See that beast up close.
Wait a minute. For some reason, the laptop is not coming through. If I can adjust it.
Smuggler sends a gift. Welcome. Thanks for joining us on the 4th of July. While he's looking for that image, the rest of what Tesla said is there is still a big expectation because the company is aiming for 50,000 Tesla semis in North America by the end of 2024. All right.
Yeah, I'm still working on it. For some reason, the laptop isn't connecting to OBS, so it'll be just a couple minutes.
Okay, we'll move on to the next topic then.
Well, I'm checking on the Tesla website right now to see if anyone can even reserve it as an individual.
Oh, if
right
it's
now.
on, yeah,
Mhm.
if order processing is available for that. Very cool.
It doesn't look like it.
Okay. So Tesla recently launched an official Instagram account for its Malaysia branch. And they announced that car sales would start by the end of the month. And further, they then mentioned that July 7th, which is just around the corner, that's this week actually, they would have an unveiling in Kuala Lumpur and start selling the Model 3 and the Model Y. And this is going to be, these are cars that are going to be built, of course, in Shanghai, since that's the closest to Malaysia. And in China, Tesla sells two Model 3 variants, the rear-wheel drive and the dual-motor all-wheel drive. And we're not sure yet what they're going to be selling in Malaysia. In 2021, apparently the Malaysian government put plans in motion to make electric vehicles exempt from taxes. And apparently it's all taxes, import, excise duties, and road taxes. So again, here's a country that's forward-thinking, that realizes they need to nudge and push their country into the EV space. And they're doing it by providing incentives that motivate all of us, monetary incentives.
Mm-hmm.
In February of 2023, this year, the Malaysia Ministry of International Trade and Industry approved Tesla's applications to import battery electric vehicles. So the road has been cleared, it's paved, and they can start selling vehicles there. Smuggler says that California will be the big push on the semi, that and the federal government push toward electric. Yeah, California has one of the most aggressive phase-out programs for ICE vehicles, and I had a statistic in one of the earlier podcasts, but the amount of emissions generated by long-distance transport is pretty substantial, so I could see where California is interested in getting those things off the road finally. YouTube, Roger Starkey. Hey, Pete. How are you, Roger? Thank you for joining us.
All right, Peter, real quick, I'm going to pull up that image. I think I
Okay.
got the thing working here.
Roger also had a follow-up comment he just posted.
Okay. Hey, Pete, happy 4th of July, or as we say in England, Tuesday. This was one of the unfortunate experiences with the UK, which now, of course, is an ally, a friend, and a trusted partner in many things. But the early days when this country was a colony of England or the UK, there were some hard feelings about the termination of that relationship. And it's not the first time in history that's happened. But the U.S. definitely has changed their position on what went on in the U.K., and we are partners and friends again.
Then we have the semi image up there.
Oh, there we go. That is an AI-generated image of a semi on the Northern California coast. And, I can't wait until we get more pictures of the interior, the cab removed, the battery, for example. When we had that semi in our neighborhood, we would love to have done a deep dive, but respecting the driver's wishes and, of course, Frito-Lay's wishes, all we were able to do was walk around that semi and take pictures from the outside. And, of course, like any engineer, we wanted much more detail than that. Eventually, we'll get it, and eventually, semis are going to show up at our Gruber Motor Company service center. I mean, after all, it is an EV. It's going to need service, and that's what we do. All right. The final thing about the Malaysia EVs being sold there is that Tesla is going to establish a head office in Malaysia, and Malaysia's pretty excited about that, having some of the economic advantages that come along with having a Tesla presence. Now, who knows? Maybe a Gigafactory is in that country's future as well. It is definitely a part of the world that attracts a lot of production-type activity because of lower labor costs. So who knows? Does anybody have the latest read on where Elon is now focused on developing yet another Gigafactory, or are we still pretty static with the ones we had mentioned?
Richard, do you know any of that?
I don't have anything on it. I can do a little research real quick. The last we heard was the deal in Spain was out, right?
Spain, apparently, and then there's a bunch of turmoil in France right now, so I'm not sure whether that's affecting anything. And then, of course, we've got Mexico already under development, so that's a done deal. Canada also been mentioned, but I think this is this is a great thing because it looks like economic incentives are definitely beginning to outweigh political jockeying, which is what we've been used to. Someone pointed out that our heads of state are apparently not quite as important anymore. It's these billionaire giants that are now beginning to meet with the statesmen of other countries. And they have a much more interesting agenda, I think, to offer. How are we going to partner? How are we going to improve the economy in your country? And what kind of incentives can you provide us to build something like this in your country, which is going to help your infrastructure?
Giga Phoenix, Pete.
Hey, there we go. And Pete,
we had our chance.
The other thing too is I've looked up the semi cost. Just going back for a sec.
Yeah.
Peterbilt anywhere from 150,000 to 350,000, depending. I've seen also as high as 400,000 for the tanker. I'm not sure. That's a different kind, but they're pretty expensive too. So.
Yeah. So this is a first in that an EV is actually not only competitive but may even be lower cost, which of course will definitely help adoption rates. Roger Starkey says, India seems a reasonable bet for a Gigafactory. I think that there's been discussion with Elon and the Prime Minister of India.
I think there was something about that. I don't know if it's gone any further, but...
Yeah, I seem to remember hearing something along those lines. In my research to see if there's any hint as to where the next Gigafactory is, nothing yet. The last information we have was about Spain and then Mexico.
Are you guys thinking maybe Russia?
Probably not, Pete.
Probably not.
Remember, this is the country that basically laughed at Elon when he went there to buy some rockets for SpaceX. And he was pretty disappointed with the reception he got. I think he said the vodka was good, but the rest of it was pretty dismal. So you don't think we'll see a Gigafactory Russia anytime soon then, huh?
Russia,
maybe in
Siberia.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe in the Siberian wilderness, we might be able to sneak one up there, Pete.
Now, here's a great way to rebuild Ukraine, put a Gigafactory there and provide some jobs again. And that would And then, of course, they would join NATO.
Of course. I mean, there's just a little hiccup of, little green men running around right now.
Yeah, we got to
kind of,
stop the war first.
get them out of there real quick.
That is for sure.
You should ask politely.
Right. So the investment industry is praising Tesla for their price cuts on their vehicles. In fact, Wedbush analyst Dan Ives. Wedbush is an investment service that typically weighs in on stock price projections, and they're very bullish typically. In fact, they are claiming that that Tesla has a $300 price target for Tesla stock. But anyway, they said that the second quarter results now, which were beyond expectations in terms of revenue and quantity of vehicles produced, shows that the price cuts were a smart poker move that will ultimately silence company bears. They're talking about there's the short sellers. I mean, these guys have got to be really hurting now. Remember at $100 per share Tesla stock price. These guys probably made a lot of money having it drop to that level. And unfortunately, when you have a short position as the price of the stock goes up, unlike a long position where you're making money, you're losing proportionately when you have a short position. So that's what he's talking about. The bears are going to go into hibernation at this point until Tesla stabilizes again or goes south again. Apparently, Tesla delivered 466,000 cars globally over the last 3 months, beating all Wall Street estimates. And the price of the stock is reflecting that. I think last week it was bouncing, or even this week, close to $280 per share. Week before then, we were bouncing $240, somewhere in there, $250. So it may continue to go up.
As of last market close, Pete, $279.82.
Right at 280 then, yeah. And of course, if Wedbush is right, 300 may be in the sights for Tesla stock at this point. So this was a massive delivery beat that was unexpected. And they feel that the price reductions were a catalyst for that. Tesla embarked on this aggressive price-cutting strategy for its vehicles this year, slashing the cost of a Tesla model 6 times since the start of 2023. I didn't realize it was that many times. And of course, it was aimed at boosting demand, and based on also a slowdown in China, followed with the COVID-19 lockdowns and the high levels of global inflation. So Tesla's getting some praise there. It looks like Roger Starkey is commenting the India project may be for solar and storage rather than cars. They have a lot of sun, yeah. He says Elon traveled to India, and the Indian Prime Minister has traveled to the U.S. to meet with him again. So something's underfoot, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
James Daniel asks, what is our take on Tesla's deals with Ford and Chevy, the use of superchargers? Well, for us, being in the EV repair business and heavily involved in electric vehicles, the standardization is something that all of us have been anxiously waiting to finally occur. The wide range of charging solutions was definitely going to eventually crimp the ability for EV adoption. In fact, Mary Barra said that one of the reasons that she felt that her customers that were interested in getting into EVs were holding off was because of the lack of robust charging solutions. So the Ford and Chevy deal came fairly quickly. The first EV manufacturer we were aware of that actually adopted the standard, and there may have been others, so pardon our ignorance, but Aptera was definitely one of the ones in the limelight. Even though they're not really making cars yet, EVs, they were willing to jump on board with this NACS standard. And then Jim Farley came along and decided, you know what, this may be good for Ford as well. And it wasn't a week or two that Mary Barra decided the same thing with GM. Now you've got the three major U.S. auto manufacturers on board with the standard. And we were all joking here all the time. It looks like the dominoes are falling. Let's start taking some bets on who's going to be next. And they came quickly, didn't they? And there will be more.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even have time to. Oh, is my mic on?
Yeah, we didn't.
Yeah, we didn't even have time to get a pool together, Pete.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah. It happened that quickly. So, James, we think it's a great deal. We think it's a great idea. You know, the insanity of having a different charge plug for every EV makes it very difficult for these charge providers. You know, what are they going to do? Put different plugs on every single charging station that they have? It's kind of like going to the gas station and having a pump with 10 different types of nozzles on it for each different type of car. You know, we understand diesel and normal gasoline needing to be different to prevent mistakes from being made, because those could be costly. But it was silly having that many different types of superchargers. I'm just personally happy that the Tesla Roadster charge connector was not the one that was selected for the standard, because it's big, it's ugly, it is out of production. And the Tesla Trident connector, as we call it, or the NACS connector, is far more elegant and has a lot more capabilities than all the other stuff, even the J1772. So we're happy. All right. So let's see what I've got here. Rumors are circulating that Tesla is planning to rev up the base battery in its Model 3 in China. And they hint an upgrade from 60 kW to 66 kW battery packs, which is going to be a 10% boost in EV driving range. They're also talking about the ambitious Project Highland project, and expecting to introduce an array of improvements on that Model 3's design and performance. The upgrade goes beyond just simply more kW. The upgraded battery is reportedly a result of the collaboration with CATL, a Chinese EV battery manufacturer, which utilizes lithium iron phosphate cells, LFP battery packs. And this technology continues to keep on improving. It promises greater energy storage, and it aligns with Tesla's ongoing commitment to production efficiencies and cost reduction. If you think about it, Tesla keeps changing battery platforms with their vehicles. You know, the Roadster and the Model S were using 18650 cells. And then came the 2170 cell and the 4680 cell. And each time they make changes, there's an improvement to the technology, better energy density, hopefully less weight eventually. And we need to get rid of that 1,000 to 1,200 pounds we're carrying around with us. Niles is joining us from the Danish Genome Institute. Welcome back, Niles. He says, if batteries were a minor cost, what range do you think most 30,000 EVs would be equipped with? In essence, how much will people pay to go from 300 miles to, say, 600? You know, my take on that is from the original T0 in 1997, which had an 80-mile range, which at that time did not quite yet convince Martin Eberhard to start Tesla, because 80 miles isn't a lot of range. It wasn't until he contracted AC propulsion systems to convert one of those T0s to lithium-ion 18650 cells, or laptop batteries as he called them. And now they got closer to 400 miles range, and that's what tipped the scales for him to finally invest and say, okay, let's start an electric sports car company. Let's call it Tesla. And now we've got something that looks like is going to be sustainable. I'm not sure that with 300 miles range, going from 300 to 600 is going to be that important to most EV users, especially if there are compromises such as additional weight, definitely cost. And as charging stations become faster, 300 miles takes you quite a distance, and you may be ready for a break at that point in time.
Well,
maybe some fast food or...
I was gonna have Richard chime in because now that he's been working here for a little while, he's been driving an EV coming from an old school gas truck that didn't get the greatest range mileage. So, Richard.
Yeah, that's right. The Ford F-150 is not the greatest. Yeah, so I've been driving a Model S for a few months now. I have zero issues with the range on my normal day to day. There's been few weekends where I need to come in and plug the car in. Right, there's very few weekends where I need more than the 200 miles that I get on an 80% charge.
Right.
There was the only place I would personally say there needs to be improvement. Is in the area of road trips. When Max and I went out to the Peterson Auto Museum, stopping, as consistently as we did was a little bit of a pain in the butt.
What was the range on that Model S that you guys took? I think it was like 200, wasn't it? 220?
I think it was around 240.
240, okay.
240, and we were charging it fully.
So to put this in perspective, most people charge at home. When I get home at night, my wife gets home at night, we plug in. By morning, we've got a full tank of gas every single morning. So we never need to go to a charging station unless we're taking a trip somewhere. Mm-hmm. The other thing I found interesting was when we had the World Traveling Roadster, Raxial joined us in a podcast last week. And my first question to him, one of the early questions was, did you ever get range anxiety driving this thing through dozens of different countries with different voltages with no infrastructure in 2012, mind you? There was no DC charging, no destination charging available. He literally had to tap into circuit breaker panels to get high rates of charge or try to find a 120-volt plug. And he said, no, I never really got range anxiety. It all worked out. People were very generous. They let me have electricity, except for France. Do you remember he said that?
Yeah.
There was something about the French. So to answer your question, Niles, personally, I don't think the difference between 300 and 600 is that great. And we're just looking forward to battery technology continuing to improve, getting lighter, smaller, more energy density, and eventually getting rid of it entirely with some sort of a energy source that doesn't require us to store DC energy. So Roger says, I think Tesla will give others the opportunity to build their own Tesla chargers. Those companies will get the incentives and revenue, and Tesla will request the contract for Megapack backup. Yeah, that's yet to play itself out. Who gets the revenue? In a later post here, we're going to talk about Electrified America. And they also are jumping on the NACS standard.
Electrify Canada as well. Yeah.
Yeah, both of those, which of course is major. They have the largest charging infrastructure in the United States, according to this article. Roger says, you're correct, 300-mile, high-density battery, fast charge, outrange the driver. Charge when the driver refreshes. And yeah, you got to do that. I mean, there's some diehards that, will travel more than 300 miles. But if you've got kids and a large prostate like I do, 300 miles isn't going to cut it. Paul Dirschka, he says, drove 7,837 miles, Massachusetts to Phoenix, Tucson, San Francisco, and back. He says, electrify America all the way except for 400 miles in South Dakota in a Hyundai Ioniq 5. There you go. I'm sure that he's got some road stories for us. So this battery upgrade for the Model 3, I guess, is coming. And it's going to increase the mileage 30 miles. Which isn't a whole lot, but, as battery technology continues to improve. I've got a picture I want you guys to pop up, if you could. It is the flying car.
Okay, and real quick, before we move on from range, there is one in here called Most Range. Did we already go through that, all the ranges of the different cars? Did you want that one? Or?
I took that one off because it was nebulous or unclear as to what it was talking about. It started in Denver, and then there was a band showing in 11 hours how far you could go.
Yeah.
But so many variables in there, I didn't think it was worth the discussion.
Okay, I'll pull up the flying car.
There we go. A couple of questions just popped in, so let's handle those before we get to flying cars. From MagDude1979, any ideas on the U029 battery error code? Limit charging to 20%, 3.7 volts per cell, 499 millivolt cell difference now. Boy, that's getting pretty serious. You know, I've been watching the Facebook post, and there's a Facebook site with that name in it, the U029, U_029 error. I think they just reached a milestone where they've got 500 subscribers now to that site. And, you know, it's always a sad story. Somebody's got a Model S or a Model X or whatever they have, and suddenly, you know, the car needs a new battery. And it's got a growing cell imbalance. And there are very few companies like us that can actually repair this. So most of these customers are faced with an entire pack replacement. It is an aberration. It's not the norm. Not all Teslas are going through this, not even a significant majority of them. But when it does happen, it's always problematic and troubling. The simple fix is you've got a resistive cell in a brick, and it needs to be excised. It's like cancer. It needs to be removed. And once that's removed, the car goes back to driving normally. It's just one of the design flaws, not flaws, but design whatevers in a lithium-ion battery pack. And until we get to better technology, or we start getting to technology that actually monitors every single cell, and then can neutralize that cell automatically, we're going to be faced with these kinds of problems. Just to give you an example of how daunting that technology would be, in a Tesla Model S 85 kW pack, you have 7,104 cells. You'd have to monitor every single one of those in order to put that kind of technology in the car. And then through a circuit breaker, a fusible link, or a pyro fuse or something, you would be able to take that cell out of service, out of play, and now your problem would go away. And that could happen automatically through firmware. So until we get to that point, or we have better battery technologies, we're going to be living with these types of errors. Niall says, I would not get an EV with less than 600 miles because specified 600 amounts to a usable 300. Yeah, good point. It depends on, you know, what kind of terrain you're driving in, and what kind of weather conditions, whether you're running the AC, whether the heaters are running. He says, for Aptera, I would opt for 1,000 miles, and I, or most buyers, would want more range and no full self-driving. I will get an Aptera if they get produced. You know, I believe that Aptera is still on track to release cars. I'm not sure what the timelines are at this point.
I haven't heard any updates, but I haven't heard anything bad either.
Mm-hmm. Mon 2009 says, 2009 says, Bayan, he says, or Niles, curious if you need that range for your daily commute. I don't know, Niles. How far do you live from the Genome Institute? And then Roger Starkey says, note the new kettle factory being built 5 kilometers, 3 miles from Tesla Shanghai. Brilliant, isn't it? We're talking about supply chain improvements at that point. Now you combine that with a recycling plant right next to that, and you've got the whole infrastructure in a highly efficient method or mode. Lightning Rod, Thunderbait, welcome back. Still here, Aptera. He says it's a winner. All right, so getting back to this flying airplane, we've got a picture here we're going to pop up for you. A company called Olive Aeronautics has recently received special airworthiness certification from the FAA, allowing it to road and air test its fully electric driving car. Now, Google this if you guys are interested in this. Olive, A-L-E-F, Aeronautics. And there's a video there that shows this car actually flying. And by the way, quick question came in, TikTok. This is not pre-recorded. We had talked about doing that because we weren't sure whether everybody wanted to take the day off here. But because of their altruistic personalities. Richard and Jesse came in today to be with our viewers and to assist me, and so we didn't have to do a pre-recorded session.
I was a little selfish. Jesse offered Duncan.
Oh,
Some
there
Dunkin'
you
Yeah,
Donuts.
bribed him a
There
little
was
bit.
some bribery involved.
Exactly.
Yes, there usually is. Yeah. So this Model A car, they call it, is a low-speed vehicle that can drive up to 200 miles on public roads, not 200 miles per hour, 200 miles distance. Let's get that straight, all right? Now, when it's flying, that's a different story. And can also launch vertically into the air with a flying range of 110 miles. Not bad, right? It features a unique gimbaled rotating cabin design for stabilization. What I picture there is the, what was that thing called? It'll come to me, and I'll remember it later. So the car offers, it says, a cinematic 180-degree plus view and the ability to avoid traffic by flying in any direction. Well, obviously, if you're stuck in traffic, you do the VTOL thing, you're out of there. You're going in a completely different direction, any direction you want from that point. The vehicle, they say, can seat up to 2 people, is available for pre-order, and it's expected to cost around $300,000. Now, initially, that price may shock the hell out of you, right? But think about this. When can you get an airplane and a car for $300,000?
I don't know, Pete. There's some. Oh my gosh! Now the word is leaving me. Those planes that everybody flies.
VTOL?
No, Cessnas.
Cessna.
Okay.
You can get some pretty cheap Cessnas and pretty cheap Honda Civics, but
Just drive it down the
something that
road.
you can just do both in.
Yeah.
No.
And I'm sure there will be lots of people to plop down $300K for that kind of capability. Probably the same people that will go into outer space for $500,000 or whatever, right? One time, here you got a plane you can use over and over again, a car and plane. So it says that the FAA is currently developing policies for the takeoff and landing of electric vehicles. Yeah, remember, this is brand new stuff. Do they have to have the earmuffs, and the lingo that goes along with takeoff and landing and permission from the, I can't imagine that any of that is going to be important anymore when you've got this kind of proliferation of cars that are able to fly.
You have to figure out full self-driving in the air.
Oh, that'd be cool too. Now, of course, planes already have that. They put those jets on autopilot, and that's when the pilots go to sleep. That's the view we don't normally see, though.
Yeah.
So the Olive CEO is Jim Duchovny, and he and the founders were inspired to create a flying car in 2015, the same year that Marty McFly drove one in Back to the Future 2, that is. When did the original Back to the Future? That was when my kids were little. That'd have to be in the last century.
Wasn't it in the
80s, maybe early 80s?
85?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. So the company also aims to provide environmentally friendly and faster commute, potentially saving individuals and companies hours each week. Well, that's pretty obvious. Those of you stuck in California traffic, to be able to go vertical and then fly wherever you want would definitely save you some time. So it looks like Niles is back with us, Danish Genome Institute. And the question earlier was, how far do you live from work? And Niles says, DGI is in my house, so my commute is from one room to another. No, it's not for independence and to avoid chargers, just to get it from the sun. With range, one can plan, handle unforeseen detours, etc., etc. Yeah, good point. All right, so it looks like Niles telecommutes. Roger Starkey says, you are in the land of the 3 today.
I think he's referring to just us 3 being
The
here.
3 of us.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Aaron, what did you guys say Aaron was doing today? And it's 114 outside in Phoenix today, by the way. Let's insert that.
Make sure they know that, yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron's playing softball all day.
Yeah, he's in a
All
tournament. Outside, in the heat.
Right.
Crazy.
Half the water that I'm drinking today, guys, is for Aaron.
It's for Aaron.
Mhm.
All right. Lightning Rod says, LOL flies. Yep, that's going to be an interesting thing to observe and to witness. Now, Niles is saying that the latest Aptera news that he saw was the production. Thank you. They raised it up for me. We've got a flat screen out there, by the way. That's where my head bops around once in a while. If it's too low, I can't read it. He says that the latest Aptera news is that production can start if they get the grant they applied for, and 90% chance they think they can. No big private investors will be needed anymore. Yeah, the federal government is slow, but they're pretty good about shoveling out money, as we well know in this country.
Yeah.
Was that the
Especially to
wrong term?
electrify America.
Was that the wrong term to use, guys? Or should I use
Shoveling
something?
out money?
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of a phrase. The gentleman with the Lotus 414 Evira
Right.
he said governments are really good at announcing their investments,
Right.
not the results.
Hmm.
But yeah, they are. I hope Aptera gets it.
Well, yeah, it's one of those technologies that we all want to see on the road. I mean, there are other solar cars, but this one looks the most promising at this point. Dana Sino says, "Hey guys, how are you? Welcome."
That's from LinkedIn. So we have visitors on all platforms.
On LinkedIn as well. Excellent. Okay. So Peter Rawlinson's is in the news. Peter Rawlinson is the CEO of Lucid. And he was also a former chief engineer at Tesla. He's saying that that Lucid plans to compete directly with Tesla's Model 3 and Model Y with Lucid's own models. Now, it's not going to be the current models, which are, $80,000 plus.
Oh no, like 180,000.
180,000.
Yeah, 120 to 250 for the Sapphire, I think.
Right? He says before the new models are introduced, however, Lucid will first launch an all-electric Gravity SUV, which is currently in development, and it's set to launch the second half of 2024. So we got to wait a year before that comes out. He says Lucid's new models are targeting Tesla's Model 3 and Y and are expected to be priced around $50,000, making them more accessible to a wider audience.
I might be able to afford a Lucid for real this time, Pete.
And he's probably hoping and praying that Elon does not continue the price cutting that he's currently doing.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, the only way Lucid's going to survive, quite frankly, if they get competitive in a more accessible market.
Mm-hmm. They say that, or he says, Lucid is also licensing its motor and battery and charging technology to other companies, such as Aston Martin, a move that could help generate revenue and make the production of new cars more feasible. That's a brilliant move. If you've got a good technology and you're a leader in the field, you've got a whole bunch of incumbents or new competitors trying to come up through the ranks. Licensing your technology is not a bad program. It allows you to generate revenue. Granted, it may strengthen some competition, but that may be offset by the amount of revenue that you're generating by licensing out your technology and oftentimes even making platforms for these other competitors. So, looks like a smart move by Lucid. Now, Lucid, it says, does not currently have any plans to develop a budget EV priced around $25,000, but Pete Rawlinson hopes that Lucid's technology could be used in such vehicles. My take on that would be it's probably going to be difficult for a company with the infrastructure that Lucid has to develop anything that low cost.
Yeah, they're not in the same ballpark as Tesla yet. And then there's the other thing of them not adopting the Tesla charger either. They're one of the holdouts still, so they're going to have to go their own route with charging. It looks like still.
We can probably move right to that because I have a talking point. Go ahead, Richard.
I was going to say, there's the old adage, pride makes you stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That is a good adage, yeah. All right, so continuing with Pete Rawlinson here, since you guys have already opened that door a bit here. Pete Rawlinson also said that Lucid Motors has expressed skepticism about the hype around Tesla's charging technology, even as other automakers like Ford and GM, and of course a myriad of others now, are adopting it. Now, what Peter likens this to, or this debate to, over charging technologies, is a comparison between a screw cap and a cork on a wine bottle, asserting that it does not determine the quality of the wine. So let's put something in perspective here. Pete Rawlinson used to be an engineering manager at Tesla. And he did have some firsthand experience with the creation of the NACS connector. At that time, it was just known as the Tesla charging connector, or as we call it in the industry, the Trident connector, because it's got three, connections. And as so in his previous role as chief engineer of the Model S with Elon. Now, Elon has tried to claim in recent years that Rawlinson was never chief engineer at Tesla, and the two are reportedly not on great terms. So that's not a good combination, considering that Lucid, in my opinion, badly needs to jump on the NACS standard. So that's the story on Pete Rawlinson's take on the NACS standard, the cork versus the wine. Do you guys have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you can just think about it like this. You've got iPhone chargers and Android chargers, right? While, yes, the cord that you use and the plug that you use doesn't determine whether or not the battery in the phone is going to do what it's supposed to do, or the quality of the battery in the phone, I would still rather have the same charging cable for any devices that I have and not have to worry, is it the micro USB? Is it USB-C? Is it an iPhone Lightning charger? I'd rather have, rather than this deck of cords here, one thing that will work for everything that I need. It's not about the quality of the wine. It's about my ability to take the cork out.
Right.
And
the other part of that is the CCS charging, or the combined charging standard, where you have separate connections for DC and AC. What Tesla innovated was using one connector for both. And the way they can do that is there is a high voltage junction box inside their cars, which directs the path to either the DC battery directly or to the AC chargers. And of course, the other manufacturers now, Ford, GM, all the ones jumping on the bandwagon, are going to have to adopt that same technology in their vehicles. And some are claiming that they're going to do that as early as Q1 of 2024. So it goes deeper than that. And that's why you can have a smaller connector, is because you don't have as many wires going through the cable and the to the connector pins themselves.
That makes complete sense. And I thought of another comparison for that cork thing. It's like needing a different corkscrew for different types of cork. Right. That's more of what this is like. If I have to have 6 different types of corkscrew for my 7 different types of wines, it's going to irritate the crap out of me.
You probably stop drinking wine.
Exactly.
And go to beer.
Exactly.
Pop the caps. Yeah. Interesting. All right. So got an interesting story here about Pikes Peak. And before I get there, I wanted to give you guys a great story about Pikes Peak and its history. There's certain racetracks around the world that are well known. Laguna Seca in California, for example, right? Pikes Peak, which is a mountain type track where you gain a lot of elevation as you go up. In Germany, around Nuremberg, you have Nürburgring, which is I think a 24-mile track, 27. It's long, right? But these are tracks around the world that have become iconic for the ones that you need to set a record on. So in 1997, the T0 was being driven around by Tom Gage, one of the early founders of AC propulsion systems. And he told me an interesting story. He said, we wanted to do Pikes Peak because we were trying to gain some visibility for this EV. And we took it up there. I think they even set a record because no EV had done Pikes Peak at that point. Anyway, you guys can look it up. I don't know that for sure. But they got all the way up to the top of Pikes Peak with the T0, which, by the way, is that car that goes 80 miles. It had lead-acid batteries in it, Optima 12-volt spiral-wound batteries. And they made it all the way to the top, and they were pretty proud of themselves. And then we're ready to go back down to the hill, right? And then realized, oh, wow, this thing has regenerative braking. We're going to boil the acid out of these lead acid cells because it's going to be constantly charging as it's going down this mountain. So we need to lose some of that charge or we're going to damage our charging or our batteries. So they spent 2.5 hours on the top of Pike's Peak, driving it around the parking lot to discharge some of that energy so they could make it back down the hill. Well, fast forward a bit. Randy Probst, one of the guys that has already done Pike's Peak with an EV, and I think it was a Tesla Model S, just last week apparently took a Model S Plaid and finally achieved a sub 10-minute time to reach the top of Pike's Peak. And I think it was like 9 minutes and, 54 some odd seconds, but it was under 10 minutes for sure. And there's a picture. In fact, if you guys can throw that up, we've got some really cool aerodynamics on this car. Well, I thought we had that picture.
Yeah, the one that's called Pike's Peak, just showing the car.
Yeah. For some reason, it doesn't show up in my folder. Huh. Are you guys seeing it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay. I see all the snow there.
Yeah, no, it's out there now.
Okay, perfect. So there you have it. Of course, in order to make it more of a race car, they had to do some modifications, and you can see a gigantic wing on the back. Those are to provide downforce on the rear wheels. I had an ACR Viper that had a 5-foot wing on the back, and its function in life was to provide 1,000 pounds of downforce at 150 miles an hour. And of course, it was the kind of car that you could do 150 miles per hour plus. On the front, they had little dive planes, and that provided 150 pounds of downforce at 150 miles an hour. But anyway, this car had some really cool features, aerodynamics, and Randy made it to the top of Pike's Peak in under 10 minutes. It has this track, by the way. It's a 12.42 mile track. 19.99 kilometers for those of you that are in the metric world. It has 156 turns, so some suspension improvements had to be made in order to be able to handle rapid turns like this. And it's a climb of 4,720 feet, 1,440 meters to the summit. The last time they tried this, I guess it doesn't say that here. Yeah, okay. So they did it in under 10 minutes. It's a remarkable achievement considering the challenging terrain and the length of that track. Let's see if there's anything else here that I can report.
Real quick, Pete, while you do that. Oh, go ahead, Richard. You got some?
No, it was just about his Viper. I was going to ask Pete. I remember you saying one time that if it were not for that spoiler on your Viper, the car would get airborne.
Yes, exactly, and that's the reason that they put these kinds of aerodynamics on cars that are capable of doing into 3 digits, is they will get airborne. And if you Google this, there were cars that actually one of them killed a race driver in Europe that got airborne at a certain speed. But yeah, it's vital not just for traction control, but to keep these cars from going off the road. Becoming an airplane, basically. So the Model S Plaid is equipped with 3 electric motors, 1 in the front and 2 in the rear. It is an all-wheel drive, and the 0 to 60 time is under 2 seconds. This had a long-range battery, apparently, and the specific modifications, and they don't get into a long list here what they did, which would have been cool. I think those of you that want to replicate this might be interested in that. But there were definitely aerodynamic improvements, suspension tuning to handle this demanding course. All right.
Hey, Pete, real quick.
Yeah.
I just want to give a message out to our people on TikTok. We see you out there. One of our other employees, Nick, our IT manager, reported there's an audio sync issue, so we apologize about that. Hopefully it's not too bad. It's off by about maybe 3 seconds, 3 seconds, something like that. But we are live. We are seeing your comments. We are pulling those, so thanks for bearing with us.
Mm-hmm.
I do also want to chime in really quick and let our YouTube audience know that the comments were not appearing for some time, so I'm working on getting those posted up for Pete to answer here right now.
All right, perfect. Oh, that's why the questions are streaming in. All right, Roger Starkey says, Lucid has to survive before building those cars. That's true. Roger Starkey also says, talk is cheap. Man 20,009 says, isn't Lucid working on an SUV vehicle, which is going to be more expensive than their current sedans? It's actually, yeah, we talked about that earlier. It's going to be less expensive, and it'll be available a year from now. Lightning Rod says, Lucid will change AR fade away. Or fade away. Is that what we're doing? Okay. Yeah. You know, again, I think that from a confidence standpoint, in terms of an EV manufacturer being able to survive, you have to consider the investors involved in Lucid, and we're talking about the Saudis and the fact that this is their second act, and they've already dumped a bunch of money into it. I'm not sure that they're like fickle investors that are looking for a quick ROI. I can't imagine that the Saudis are in this for the short term. It seems to me that this is going to be a long-term investment strategy. So I'm not too concerned about Lucid. Here we go. Got a bunch more questions. Lightning Rod. Oh, okay. Niles is back. He says, have you looked at the Koenigsegg Raxial motor? I think it has the higher power weight ratio. Maybe it's more expensive to more. Not sure. We have not looked into that. So it's a Raxial motor. He spells it Raxial for those of you that want to look that up. Lightning Rod says, it's beyond foolish not to adopt the most widely adopted charging network. Well, yeah, good point. It's an evolving standard that has enough momentum where we know it's not going to go away. And can you really imagine somebody coming up with a second standard now this late in the game? It just doesn't seem reasonable, logical, or plausible. Roger Starkey says, before you start comparing corks to screw tops, you have to be producing wine. Lucid isn't really doing that.
No, that's a good point.
I thought that was a solid comment, Roger.
Great, thank you. PYGKLB says, one corkscrew is left-handed. Lightning Rod says, just recently in Canada, there was a 2-month-long 500-mile gap in charging infrastructure for non-Tesla networks. Apparently it's fixed now, so drive away. Lightning Rod also says, 6 or more different corkscrews that may or may not work. And he says, unplugged performance and giant helmet. Roger Starkey says, yes, it was unplugged, and don't boast. Or you get a bunch of comments coming in. Oh, there's some more. All right. Roger says, Randy had that heater running this year. He fogged up last year. Oh, interesting point. So he forewent or compromised some battery power to keep that heater running. And it wasn't for people comfort. He needed it for safety so it didn't fog up the windshield. Yeah, I guess going up almost 5,000 feet, you're going to see some temperature changes and probably humidity changes. TikTok, Leo says, best is to let everyone buy a battery, compound that, to buy a battery. Compound that, and you can build a massive power station. Let's say it's less than $1, €1, or pound. 7 billion batteries bought creates a massive power plant. It's the way to go. All right, interesting opinion. TikTok, Leo says, I built energy modules with lithium-ion phosphate, Leo Gold. Okay. A lot of people are repurposing EV battery modules, and that's an interesting way to do that. TikTok, Elric2333 says, electric is the future. Buy electric, ? I could see it being the new electric, NASCAR car. Tesla Plaid S has 1,000 horsepower. TikTok, Elric also says, I think Lucid is very vital to the EV market. Well, for a number of reasons, yes. Facebook, Rajib Jadav says, good morning. And he's not telling us where he's from, but there we go. TikTok, Bfish62 asks, are there any other ways to store electrical energy in development that won't have such an impact on Earth? It's a good question. I'm not sure that anything other than DC storage has been evolving or developing at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think what we talked about with the recycling increasing, I think that's going to help a lot with that.
Mm-hmm. And of course, it's short-lived. It will eventually go away. The need to store energy in a DC form is short-lived.
This is where I'm going to insert my fusion.
Fusion.
It's on its way.
And of course, we talk about the NACS standard. The whole notion of plugging in something to get a charge is also going to go away eventually. But for now, it's vital. So we need standardization. TikTok, Elric2333 says, how do you feel about Toyota hydrogen technology? We just broached that subject actually in the last podcast and pointed out that one of our other podcast guests, both of us were inspired and motivated to get into EVs because of Toyota, because of the Toyota Prius hybrid. And it was fascinating for us to be able to go to move something on electric power for almost a mile under 30 miles an hour. And that's why I got my Tesla Roadster, because I liked that experience and I wanted to do that 100% of the time with a battery electric vehicle. What do I think about Toyota? I think that Toyota badly needed some change in management and just got it recently. I think that hydrogen technology, although a very clean way and meets all of the requirements for emission-free transportation, is the absolute wrong direction to go in transportation. It's back into plumbing and mechanical items and gas and storage, and it's electric vehicles have something called simplicity, and compared to ICE engines especially. And it just seems to me that continuing in that direction is a far more stable way to head into an emission-free future. Instagram is asking.
Well, hold on, we're skipping a lot of them here. We got to go back to where we were.
Okay. YouTube, Niles is saying Raxial because it's a combination of radial and axial. Okay. I have a lot of respect for Christian von Koenigsegg and his organization being able to build these hypercars. And he actually sent us a Tesla Roadster power electronic module years ago that burned up that we repaired for him. So I can only imagine that back then, and this is probably about 2014, 2015, they had a Tesla Roadster to do some reverse engineering, which isn't a bad thing because it probably taught them what Tesla had done and what some of their successes were. But I think that Christian is definitely one of the leading automotive manufacturers on the planet. And I'm not surprised that they are coming out with technology that seems to be ahead of some of the rest. YouTube. Oh, you guys are really moving some questions here quickly. I'll try to keep up.
We're trying here.
Yeah. Roger Starkey says, sodium batteries for storage. Yes, we like sodium. It's plentiful. Instagram, 958RJJJ has a question. Is Gruber Motor Company considered a subsidiary in, for example, the Netherlands, because electric cars are very popular over here? So I think what we're saying here is, are we considering scaling, moving into other parts of the world? The answer is always the same for us right now. There is a severe shortage of manpower, people able to do this type of work, and that's really what's preventing our ability to scale. With the Tesla Roadsters, it's not that big an issue because as support begins to decline, we are continuing the method of having cars shipped to us. And I'm not talking about shipping a Tesla Roadster cross-country for low-tech auto, paint, body, brake, suspension, the mechanical stuff. We're talking about the sophisticated, advanced portions of an EV repair. And in a Tesla Roadster, that has to do with doing a battery recovery to avoid a $30,000 battery replacement, repairing the electronics in the car, which are obsolete, out of production. You can't even get some of the chips anymore. And for that type of repair, people will ship cars to us. In some cases, we even have Model S cars shipped to us for the battery type work or the battery recoveries and repairs. We have a long lead time on the Model S, so before you contact us, check with us to see what the lead time is. Tesla Roadsters, we always have room for. We take those immediately, and oftentimes it's important to do that because with a resistive cell, you have a brief window of opportunity to bring that car back to life. YouTube, Ram Shambo 2001. He says, body repair seems crazy expensive for my Model S. Do you think Cybertruck will be better or worse? What's crazy expensive about that is the parts shortages that sometimes occur with that, and the requirement that you need special certifications and training for body shops. These Teslas are not steel chassis or steel frame body panels. There you go. That's the right word. When you have aluminum body panels, you're in a different realm, a different world. And it requires special certifications by body shops. You combine that with the fact that parts aren't readily or instantly available because of for a number of reasons, but one of them is the production goals that Tesla has. So the insurance companies tend to err on the side of caution, and they total things that really shouldn't be totaled oftentimes. And that's where a lot of these repair costs come from. Do I think the Cybertruck will be better or worse? I think any new vehicle is going to have a higher cost attached. It may take a while before risk management catches up to those costs, like insurance companies. So yes, prepare yourself for some higher costs compared to stable vehicles that have been around for decades and manufacturers that have had decades of production time.
Yeah, and Pete, do you remember what was it, just a month ago maybe? Was that I think it was a Rivian that was going kind of trending viral on Twitter, where it was something like $40,000 or something, $42,000 for a really simple rear end bumper thing or tailgate thing.
Yeah, what looked like, and let's put it in perspective, what looked like a crumpled rear quarter panel may have also extended into frame damage, wiring harness damage. The entire bed may need to have been replaced, So, yeah, but that was definitely one that made the headlines. It was there for quite a while, actually.
That one's actually rich rebuilds.
Oh, it was rich rebuilds.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Roger Starkey says, it's your humongous helmet causing the itch.
In response to the lightning rod.
Oh. My Raxial. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Lightning Rod says, my Raxial is itchy. Okay. It's always fun when our audience talks to each other, and the team here isn't updating me because I'm in the middle now, suddenly saying something way out in left field.
Yeah.
All right. So, Roger again from YouTube. He said, hydrogen wastes so much that you need 3 times the grid energy for the same output at the wheels. I did not know that. Lightning Rod says, too far apart. I can't touch both at the same time. And that's probably another one of those cryptic comments that's related to something somebody else said.
Probably.
All right. So one of the news items I have here, have we caught up with all the questions? We're good. All right. EVs. This is an article that says EVs offer new possibilities for sound engineering. And as you may be aware, EVs do have a safety issue. And the most experience I have with that, I like going to garage sales, and I usually have a Tesla Roadster when I do. And it's not uncommon for me to pull up to a garage sale, and there are people literally walking in front of me or off to the side, completely unaware that I'm there, and they'll walk into you, they'll walk in front of you, and you have to be aware of that. In an ICE engine with a 2-chamber muffler, that's not a problem. They know you're there. So what they've been what the governments have been proposing, of course, is a way to make EVs have distinctive sounds. And unlike traditional ICE engines, which have very distinctive sounds, EVs, of course, are totally quiet. So it opens up some possibilities to design and customize sound profiles in electric vehicles. Now, that vehicle that we have for sale, that Lotus hybrid, do you remember the story on that, the three different sounds that had?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I forget when this car's manufactured. It's escaping me, but they put three different sounds. They had a V8, a V12, and then a quote spaceship engine, which would have come in handy when we were at Concourse of the Hills, Pete, and I was driving 7-Eleven, and you had your VIN number 5. And do you remember when we saw the first car leave? We were like, all right, we're gonna hop in and try to skedaddle. People were just crisscrossing in front of us because they didn't see that our cars were moving, and we were trying to get out. That, a nice little, V8 engine sounding, nice revving would have remedied that quickly.
Which at the car show, the majority of them had, because it was a car show and everybody was showing off their horsepower and their all the enhancements that they made to their car. So this particular vehicle, though, it did have a number of different sounds, and it simulated a 6-cylinder engine, which was really sedate. There's nothing exciting about the sound of a 6-cylinder engine, at least to me. Then there was a V12, which, as one of our podcast guests a couple of weeks ago pointed out, to him, it's the sound of that is like a symphony orchestra. And I agree. You get a finely tuned exhaust on an exotic engine or a hypercar, and those are pretty compelling sounds. And then that final sound that he had was, that Star Trek, Star Wars, I think, the iPod racer sound.
Yeah, it was like a pod racer type of. Honestly, it kind of sounded like how the Model 3s sound when they move.
Really?
Yeah, like kind of that glowy, just
hum kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hollywood actually used a Tesla Roadster sound in one of the movies that had futuristic vehicles, and I wish I had more details, but I found that pretty interesting. All right, so EVs are going to have sound because they're quiet. And for pedestrian safety, of course. So they are talking about trying to create a framework with what type of sound would be acceptable. And various jurisdictions around the U.S., at least, have implemented regulations requiring EVs to emit sounds at low speeds. They don't get into great length here to talk about the types of noise that these are going to make. I think Elon had a noise that was able to be projected out into the outside of the car, and the National Highway Safety Administration, NHTSA, made him take that off because of some sort of a safety issue that it would be distracting or something. So the jury's out on what we're going to end up with, but EVs will definitely have to have some sound as this thing progresses, and I'm sure they'll cater to consumer preferences, and maybe even give you a range of options.
Well, I think the Dodge and the DeLorean both are going to have sound, right? We heard the Dodge is at the Detroit Auto Show or somewhere over there. But yeah, I know people are already working on it.
Yeah. I think if I had to make a choice, I would probably go, and if it was a performance car like, the Model S Plaid, that had maybe some aerodynamics on it, maybe even a wing, right? Like this Probst car that went up to Pikes Peak. I would probably want the sound of a big block 60s muscle car with a 2-chamber exhaust and a lopey cam that gives it a rough idle. Now I think we're matching the car to at least for my generation.
But Pete, how do they do that? Are they going to simulate shifting somehow as well, or?
Actually, yes, good point. They are going to tie that to RPMs. And the closest thing that I have to that, I bought a Kurzweil keyboard about 30 years ago or so, and it was state-of-the-art stuff at the time. And what they did was it had sampled sounds. They actually recorded sounds from violins, cellos, a Steinway piano, and those were the sounds that were then embedded in the memory chips in this electronic Kurzweil keyboard. And they're going to be able to do the same thing with cars. Roger Starkey gives us his preference regarding what kind of sound he wants. I would want a recording of a herd of sheep bleating. Yes, Bleating is what I meant to say there.
No, Jesse, should I
Go ahead.
display to the audience that you don't need a recording of that, Roger? You
Yeah,
just
Richard,
need you just need me in the car.
Richard has you covered on that
I got
one.
you. Just don't chew it.
That's
does a
it. Yeah,
really good,
that is an
sheep.
excellent. You know, that reminds me, I was in the Alps one day and avid photographer, and there was a herd of sheep grazing just off the side of the road there. And I wanted them to turn around so I could see their faces, right? I'm there with my camera. And finally, I decided I'm going to yell like a madman and see what happens. I did, and all 12 sheep turned around and looked at me. And that is one of my best pictures.
That's awesome.
Lightning Rod, Roger Starkey. He says, I have no response. You win again. I love you being first. All right, there's, again, our viewers are talking to each other. He's talking about the herd of sheep. Maybe? All right.
I believe so.
Probably.
Yeah, I think
Right.
I think Lightning Rod is saying that he likes that idea.
And it's probably just as much fun watching me try to decipher what the comment means on the flash or on the flat screen. Lightning Rod, yes, he says. Little electric motors and transmissions. Yes to my Subaru. If you really want to know the current state of car sales, book me a test drive at my local Subaru dealer, please. Sounds like a noble plan. All right. So I've got a bus I want to throw up here. It's called Bus in the Alps.
Okay.
And those of you that have been to Switzerland, Austria, Bavaria, we're talking, or even northern Italy, the Alps are one of the most beautiful areas of the world. I mean, we're talking about mountain that have still snow caps on them, jagged rock faces. Then you go down a bit, and you have green trees, pine trees, and then you have farmhouses.
That's where
with-
my drink is from.
you go.
Water from the Alps, right here.
Yep. What's that called? Liquid Death?
Liquid Death. Yeah.
There you go.
Open spot for sponsorship.
Yep.
Liquid Death.
Yeah, I need that can right here. So then you have these beautiful farmhouses with geranium porches and verandas, and then you've got cows grazing in the field, and then the last thing is down below you have an alpine lake. Just gorgeous, right?
Mm.
Now, can you imagine diesel trucks spewing smoke into this pristine, sterile, almost sterile environment, right? Well, it looks like the Germans have solved it. That bus that you see there is in Berchtesgaden. Now, that's a tough one to pronounce, but the reason most Americans know this, the military, is because the military has a large base there after World War II. It's Berchtesgaden. And these buses now, they have a total of 8 of them, 41 seats each. They're 100% electric. And they're the ones now that are traversing these steep mountain roads in the beautiful Alps in that region. And so for those of you that travel there that want clean transportation, this is something that's available to you now. There's a lake not too far from here. It's called Koenigsegg, which means King's Sea. And this was like 30 years ago or so. We went on a boat on this lake in amongst the Alps, both on both sides. Pristine, clean, and it was an electric boat, totally electric, totally quiet. And they had a staff member on board that had a trumpet. And in the middle of the lake, he pulls out this trumpet and he picks it up and he does a really slow trumpet solo, pausing long enough in between to capture the echoes coming off the Alps.
Wow.
And it was a touching, moving experience for all of us on that boat. But anyway, electric boat, clean energy.
Mhm.
It all goes hand in hand. All right. Any more questions coming in? Niall says those sounds will probably be standardized too. So maybe we won't get the variations. Roger Starkey says you're hired. Okay, he
All
likes
right.
your bleeding.
All right, Pete. I'm gonna go ahead and head out and fly on out to England. Right this second.
You are.
Yes. Bye.
Okay.
No, just kidding.
And I'm saying how. All right. Let's see. So we talked about Pete Rawlinson. We got that out of the way. All right, lithium-ion batteries. Apparently, there's an Australian company called Li-S Energy, and they claim they have an innovative battery that replaces lithium-ion with lithium-sulfur. Now, what have we heard? Sodium, right? Water. And now we've got sulfur. Now we're going back into the lead-acid world, basically, because that has sulfuric acid. For those of you that have experienced a battery runaway, lead-acid battery runaway, what I mean by that is overcharging a lead-acid battery will boil the sulfuric acid, and you will get a powerful scent of sulfur in that building or in that room. So what they're working on or have is a lithium sulfur battery that has greater capacity than lithium ion. They claim that this 20-layer battery is about the same size as the lithium ion counterparts, but with half the weight. Now, see, we're going in the right direction. They've been trying to get rid of 1,200 pounds.
Yeah.
So lithium sulfur may be the ticket here. And it improves, of course, on lithium ion. They are touting also that this battery has a low flammability, which is a huge win because we all know that lithium ion is pretty unstable. There's a lot of energy packed in there. So in a press release, they say that that it's the electrolyte that works in this battery and a very low combustion risk. And they're using nanomaterials and nanotubes. Now, we can probably get technical here, but I don't know. I'd have to ask ChatGPT what this is, but it sounds very high-tech, does it not? I'm sure we'll research it the next time around and be able to talk about it. But
yeah, we'll dive more into that.
Yeah. In Australia, those of you that want to look it up, Li-S Energy is the name of the company. And it looks like we're continuing to improve battery technology. Lightning Rod says, the dealers, especially at Subby World, are missing out on the biggest score ever. Rebuilt and basically backward compatible electric drivetrain would still allow them to sell all components for vastly upgraded 20 to 20-year-old vehicles, 25 to 20-year-old vehicles. And somebody else earlier wanted one of us to start yodeling, probably because we were talking about the Alps. And I think the person here that does the best impersonations of sounds is probably Richard. Do you know how to yodel?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But
Okay.
Roger, I will find out. I will figure it out.
Well, I'm going to be back there in a week and a half now. And I actually do yodel. It's one of the things that you do when you've climbed that, mountain. And you get to the top and you look out and you say, man, I'll bet you I can create some echoes here. And that's when the yodeling starts. All right. So I think we are wrapping up here, guys.
Yeah, that's hour and a half. It's good time.
Hour and a half. Are there any final questions that want to come through? It looks like not. I have one additional item. It's about the Vegas Loop. Do you want to throw up that picture, Jesse?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
Yeah. Now, the Las Vegas Loop was something that was inspired by, well, according to legend, Elon was sitting in traffic in California and saying, this is absurd. You know, why do people put up with this? And somehow his creative mind decided, why not go underground? Let's tunnel underneath all this stuff. Well, that's not a new technology. I mean, look at New York. These subway tunnels have been there well into the last century. You know, going underground has been quite popular for transportation. In fact, in New York, there's a labyrinth of varying crisscrossing, layers underground. But California just hadn't done this yet. So the first major installation of this concept was in Las Vegas. And the city of Las Vegas actually contracted the Boring Company to connect 51 stations in a tunnel network with a total length of 45 kilometers in Las Vegas. And now it looks like they're going to expand this. For the few people that we saw that were on YouTube that went to CES months ago, one of them was, actually a couple of them drove through this tunnel. Is it my phone or yours? Oh, sorry, we've got a time limit on the Instagram phone. Are we back on? Okay. So they drove in this tunnel, and it was pretty cool. You know, they were, of course, driving a Tesla or an EV. The expansion now in Las Vegas, let me get back to the article then. They're going to go from 51 stations to 69 stations, and the tunnels now are going to span, instead of 45 kilometers, 100 kilometers. And those that visited CES, it's usually a pretty busy time, and I can't imagine that you can get a car anywhere near close to that. So this Boring Company tunnel definitely moved people around in a highly efficient manner. All right.
I think, wasn't Jay Leno, you already mentioned that? Jay Leno took a ride in there with him?
I did not mention that, no.
Yeah, I think there's a video you guys can go find out on YouTube where they did a couple test drives, and he and Elon drove through it, I'm pretty sure.
Very cool. Well, you know what? We're really pleased that we have such a large audience on a holiday in the United States. And again, my thanks to the staff that showed up here today, Richard and Jesse, and myself for that matter. When I go home, we're going to call my brother in Germany and prepare for the vacation next week. We appreciate all of you joining us, as always. And our next podcast is going to be tomorrow. It's the Tesla Roadster podcast at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We've got a lot of things to cover there for tomorrow. And then Thursday, we do the EV podcast again, like this one, and we've got a guest. Ellie in Space is going to be joining us.
Yep.
And Ellie in Space is a very interesting EV enthusiast, also a SpaceX enthusiast. She just got her Model 3 about a week or so ago, and there were already some images. It looks like it's got a really cool light reflective wrap on it, kind of a
Yeah,
turquoise.
she put some underglow lights on it too as well. She was showing it at night on Instagram. It's pretty cool.
Yep, and I'm sure she's going to talk about that as well Thursday. So make sure you join us. Feel free to bring your questions. And then Friday, we've got our Gruber Power Services podcast, which is also evolving nicely. And then Sunday, Jesse and I do an AI podcast, and we call that the Artificial Future. Exactly. So appreciate all of you being in the audience, and we will see you next time. Thank you.